Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I'm going to be doing a brief overview of the recent UI panel that happened at PAX West for Final Fantasy XIV. Most of the time, I skip these. You know, it's a lot of just them talking about their history, and it's interesting, and it's usually worth a watch, but there's normally not too much to report from these things. Well, it's maybe about 5 minutes worth of stuff to report. And that's kind of what happens with this one, but it's interesting stuff. So I figure I'll briefly cover what they talk about, some of the information, because there are some infographics here that are pretty worth discussing. And I think people will be discussing them for some time, as well as some of the teases for things that are to come when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV's UI. So we have it here from the live stream, putting the U in UI, tailoring the Final Fantasy XIV experience. They quickly just came on stage, just 3 people. It's just Foxclon, Aime, and the UI lead, Kei Odagiri, who has been with the team since 2012, joined as they were preparing to launch A Realm Reborn. He was just on the UI team at this point. He was gradually elevated to his current lead position, so he's moved on up. He's been with the game for a really long time and worked on a lot of features, as he had no problem showing us a slide or two later. I mean, look at this. You can see working on the targeting system, keybinds, auto translation, snipe mode, which is like when you're doing main story quests or side quests or whatever, and you have to, like, you know, pan the camera around, like in Stormblood, where you have to hit the dudes with the darts. He did Air Force One, still waiting on Air Force One Extreme. PvP spectator mode, duty recorder. Yeah, maybe you take that one off. Maybe just push that one aside. You know, maybe it's just... But yeah, he's worked on a ton of stuff, whether it's been in the lead position or just as one of the UI designers as a whole. Some things he specifically has been responsible for: movement and camera systems, standard movement, legacy movement, and the camera systems involved, flying, swimming, diving, auto run, auto fall, lock on, ride pillion. Am I the only person who does not like the term ride pillion whenever we're talking about like multi-seater mounts? I've never liked that. Just ride pillion. I mean, it's not wrong, but like, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't vibe with me, I suppose. Then he talks a little bit about his history with the Final Fantasy XIV team. Essentially, before he even joined the team, there was a big presentation about the future of Final Fantasy XIV. Some really cool stuff in there. There's an old screenshot of a chimera being fought in something closer to 1.0's graphic style, and A Realm Reborn looked nothing like that from this preview. It was a concept screenshot, but still, it's really funny looking back and seeing how it looked nothing alike to what they were saying A Realm Reborn was going to look like in the end. So yeah, he was doing all that, and now he ends up talking about his work on the camera and the control schemes that they have. So the big thing was he looked at how the game really needed to cover a lot of control schemes, specifically keyboard and mouse and controller. So he looked at World of Warcraft and saw how there were so many controller players there, but they also knew that Final Fantasy XI, their senpai MMO, was heavily controller based. A lot of people don't know this, but Final Fantasy XI is not a PC MMO inherently. Right now, it's only available on PC, but it was released on the PlayStation 2 first and PC 6 months later when it launched in Japan. So it's really made for controller, and keyboard only is the other option. The mouse is utterly useless in this game. So even KB and M, it was just KB if that wasn't really your option. So they really just needed to make sure that they had all of that available and made sure they could reach as many players as possible. And that was something that was partly his responsibility. So he has some very fond memories of it. Now, we got a very interesting infographic here. For the first time ever, they told us how many people play on keyboard and mouse and how many people play on controller. I'd assume that they took this data by looking at the character configurations of their active subscribers and seeing which one is toggled, whether it be controller or keyboard and mouse. That's the simplest way to probably do it. Now, before I reveal this, we're going to do a fun little thing for the YouTube comment section. If you haven't seen this, I want you to make a prediction right now. How many people do you think play on gamepad and keyboard and mouse? I'll also say this. It's 3 different categories. It's how many in North America, how many in Europe, and how many in Japan. So it's out of 100% for each one of them. So you could say like 50-50 for North America, or like 60-40 for Europe, and like 50-50 again for JP. Like essentially you need 3 predictions for this instead of like a flat amount. So in the YouTube comment section, I'm giving you a minute. Pause, type that out. I'll wait a few more seconds here too before I unveil it. And there will be one more of these predictions, so don't press send yet. There's going to be another prediction that comes later. I guess I could just tell you it'll be standard versus legacy, same format. How many people do standard? How many people do legacy? So you can start getting those predictions in on the YouTube comment section. So this was very interesting, but also not that surprising. As we go forward, we can see, come on, go to the next slide. Where's the next slide? It's somewhere. So this is the format, like we said, and there's going to be a bar underneath each of them. And these were the results. Come on, where is it? There it is. So in North America, 40% of players are on controller, 60% are on keyboard and mouse. In Europe, 33% are on controller and 67% are on keyboard and mouse. And in Japan, a staggering 77% are on controller and 23% on keyboard and mouse. That's not surprising at all. Japan is not a PC-centric gaming community. They are largely console-based, and as such, there's much more comfort with controller over there, whereas in other regions of the world, it's a lot more mixed. A lot of people may have grown up with consoles but moved on to PC gaming, and some people vice versa, and it really just becomes about comfort for the individual, and less, I guess, cultural impact, I suppose. However, I hope that your legacy and standard predictions are in, because if you know how Final Fantasy XIV works, they likely are impacted by seeing these results. Because I think it's fair to say nobody plays standard on controller. There's going to be that one person who goes, I do and I love it. Sit down. We're not talking about you. All right. You're like the 1 in a million somewhere that's actually doing that. And I feel so bad for you in the process. So as long as you're having fun, go nuts. But, you know, oh, and then I jumped ahead a little bit, but we do have the other result. I was looking for the second result since I made you do both predictions. For usage breakdown, in North America, 31% of players, I'm a part of that 31%, use standard, and 69, nice, play as legacy. In Europe, 35% play standard and 65% play legacy. And in Japan, 3% play standard and 97% play legacy. Now remember, the percentages from before were the minimums that this was going to be for legacy. So no matter what, at least 40% of people were going to be legacy players, because 40% were controller. And again, standard on controller is not really a thing people do. So out of the remaining 60%, about half of those players were also playing legacy on keyboard and mouse. So that's how you get to that 69%. So there's still like another 30, that 30-ish% that's separate. In Europe, it was, yeah, same deal. 33% was the minimum, but then you have another 32% that from the remaining bit, you know, again, about a little bit less than half of the player base that also did that. Now for Japan, 77% minimum was going to be legacy. So it was about the remaining 23%, and like 95% of the remaining people, you know, another 20% on top of the 77 were going to be legacy. I mean, legacy is, for all intents and purposes, even though I play standard, I do think legacy is the superior mode. I'm more comfortable on standard, but I think legacy has far more merit to it. I do use it for certain things like deep dungeon solos, for example. And I have used it for some other parts of the game as well, but I'm largely a standard player. I'm not really surprised to see this all that much, just because I know how good legacy is, plus just seeing the controller bits earlier kind of automatically informs it a little bit. Now, moving on, they just talked a little bit about that percentage, and then they went on to talking about group pose. So the G pose section is largely just talking about how they developed it, like what was the purpose. And the main reason they even made G pose in the first place was because it was difficult to sync up emotes for screenshots. That was really all it was. They weren't like trying to make it to be like the super highly used, intense camera mode. There's like, oh, we just want a way to sync up emotes. And then it became what it is today with all the additional features and all the quality of life that it's gotten over the years. And we actually get a pretty good look at all of those features that have been added, which we'll see right here. Just have to skip ahead a little bit more. There you go. You can see these are just a brief list of every quality of life that Group Pose has gotten since its implementation back in 3.1. So all the way from 3.2 to 6.3, which is when it got its last one with the RGB values and the color settings. And yeah, it's just a feature that people love and has been a mainstay in Final Fantasy XIV. I mean, the G-posers on socials they literally have an entire subculture of people who use this feature. So it's not really a surprise in any way at all. That they ended up just using it for what it was. We know how people do it. So now they talked about upcoming quality of life or things they are currently working on. So one thing that you cannot do in G-Pose is get fisher casting, the animation for casting as a fisherman for G-Pose, because they have no way of getting the info to the server of the animation for casting and allow you to do G-Pose at the same time. The two systems just don't overlap. I thought they would maybe just make a casting animation, like a slash, like cast fish or whatever, or cast rod. That is the equivalent of doing this, and then that way it actually works. But we don't know what they're doing, but apparently they've been chugging away at this, and while they're not 100% sure, it's looking like it should be ready for patch 7.1. So it's just another G-Pose quality of life that is on the way. Now, that is not the only thing with G-Pose. There's also a problem with taking portrait screenshots. Now, I saw this and was very confused. When I look at this, I was like, well, what's the issue? You take a normal screenshot and then you just crop the sides off, make this like 608 by 1080. But the problem is that's not what they're talking about here. They're talking about essentially maintaining the resolution and turning it this way. It's the only way to do it. And then, as they showcase with the following slides, when you're trying to see if it's even working, you got to look at your screen like this and be like, is that right? Is that good? And so you end up just tilting your head to the side. It's kind of just a pain. It also messes with the controls to actually try to, get it all to work. So they're just trying to make this something that is not a pain to do, something that's kind of built into the game and is just second nature. Apparently a big G-Pose feature that, again, for me, I just think of the crop and I don't really care about the resolution after that. But they are still working on it. There's no set date. Work continues to add the ability to pan horizontally and vertically after adjusting roll angle. Thank you for your patience. The next feature. This has been a hot topic for quite some time. The next feature, especially as of late. And I don't think it's skipping ahead. So let me just do this. Come on, click ahead. Just a little bit more. Little bit more. Little bit more. There it is. You may notice there are chat bubbles over individual players. You can see on the left, we have their party member with a party member chat bubble. On the right, we have a say chat bubble, and I'm colorblind, so I believe that's yell right there. All showcasing the chat bubbles, all in different colors. This, of course, has been something that players have been achieving through other means for quite some time. And they are still working on it. They said they've run into a few hiccups with incorporating it into the game proper, but they are hard at work and they are making progress on it. My opinion, I'm turning off chat bubbles. I'm sorry, let me rephrase. I'm never turning them on. They're probably not going to turn them on by default, right? I say probably never turning these on. Listen, I've tolerated people on this planet for, my entire life. Making sure I can't see what everybody's saying helps with that. So I'm definitely not turning this on. However, as the raider in me can't help but think, turning it on for party chat or alliance chat if they allow it, and callouts like pairs, spreads, that popping up as a chat bubble is something that is inherently valuable. And I think will help in terms of raid function. So while people might be thinking about this for role-playing, how annoying it might be in Limsa Lominsa, how many different ways can I have to suffer seeing club announcements or DJ announcements? There is some functional use to it that could be handy, which is why I say I will probably just not turn it on. I don't need the chat bubble to do raids, but it could be valuable as long as it's controlled and it's just one person who's doing it and it's not everyone trying to be responsible at the same time. There are just so many other ways to do certain things like that. You know what my group started doing? Started marking bosses with 2, 4, or 8. 2 means light parties, as in there's going to be 2 AoEs, so we break in the light parties. 4 for pairs, there's, the what's it called? Yeah, just 4 pair AoEs. That's what it means. Doesn't matter what the targeting scheme is. And 8 means spreads because there'll be an AoE on each person. 8. And that's been great because the bosses are stocking those things for later most of the time. And so you have to remember them, and that's the way to remember them. And that's been nice. Don't even need that. But that's it. I'm not crazy about chat bubbles, but people who are, they can enjoy it. And that's all that matters, is the people who want to enjoy it can enjoy it. All right. Now that is not the last feature that they wanted to tease us about for quality of life. There was one more thing the UI team wanted to quickly share their progress on. The UI lead, I should say, Kei Odagiri. And it's a feature that was noticeably absent from Dawntrail's release, and you only heard about it if you were paying attention to the many interviews that came out of Mediator and around the time of release. And that feature is none other than the Raid Planner. Yeah, they are still working on this. There was a comment saying that they were doing extra work on it. They kind of had to start over at some point, so it couldn't be out for Dawntrail's release. And what we have here is an updated screenshot. So originally, this screenshot was, well, we had a screenshot similar, and it was kind of like the one that just showed your different raid plans. So like it would be like, oh, raid plan 1, raid plan 2, raid plan 3. This is the editing screen. So you can see on the left, each of the jobs is listed as an object. The roles are listed as objects. For example, instead of listing, the paladin and the warrior, it lists tank, healer, just working on that. So, but which means that obviously DPS is also there. So just covering all the different scenarios that you could. If you wanted to set up pair positions, you want to set up light party positions, all that stuff would be possible under this. The monster position as well. And then the markers are on screen. You can see A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, and 4 off on the top right, not really being used. And then also the 18th section on the bottom left is the type of arena. This is actually my number one concern about the Raid Planner is while yes, it is great to have an in-game way of showcasing something like this, the number of arenas present in the Raid Planner is going to be very important. What players often do nowadays, when we're first progging, we often just like throw together like a bullshit circle or square or something. We just start like drawing on it. Or maybe we grab like an old circle or square, like grab it off of like a website or something that just like has like generic arenas. But what ends up happening is people take top-down screenshots of the arenas and then use those as the templates. Because one of the most important things is being able to see the patterns on the arena. Most people will be like, oh, you want to stand on like exactly this square pattern on this arena. There are patterns on the ground. This is, for this screenshot, it literally is the Blue Mage Masked Carnival arena. And while obviously they have different ones because of number 18 down there, my concern is they will not have specific arenas, which will loosen the value of this a whole lot. It would be great if this was standard, but if I don't see this replacing people posting like raid plans and paste bins and stuff in PF versus just sharing this and somebody clicking on it, unless they go into that level of excruciating detail. And quite frankly, I don't see that happening. I still think it's a good idea to have it in the game. I think especially when you're trying to convey ideas with your team about what you want to do, this is probably the better way to be able to do it in the game, especially during week 1. I just think its use is limited unless they go that extra mile. But we'll see. I'm glad to hear that they are still making progress on it. They are still working on it. And we are just going to have to wait for more details. There's no real release window on this that they gave. They just said that they are still working on it. It will be out in 7.x at some point. And that's it. Please look forward to it. And that was the end of the panel. At that point, they just said, thank you. Ko Tagiri, it was his first time outside of Japan, not just in the US, but outside of Japan. And so he was very nervous for this presentation, did a fantastic job, and glad to have him. Hope to hear more from the UI team, because UI is one of the things that I think a lot of us look forward to in its quality of life aspects, pretty much every single patch. Thank you also to Aimee for translating, and Foxconn, of course, for actually hosting. They had a bunch of spare chairs on the side there, which is a little weird, but it worked out just fine. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this video covering the UI panel from PAX West. Let me know what you think of some of the G-Pose updates. Are you looking forward to the raid planner? And are you surprised? Were your predictions anywhere close to right about standard, legacy, as well as keyboard and mouse versus controller? Very curious to see what my comment section is going to look like for those who didn't actually watch this beforehand. But anyway, I'm going to wrap up the YouTube recording here and get back to my Twitch stream. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.